That's Wanderlei Silva getting knocked out cold in the midst of the brawl and then getting dragged. His carcass being dragged to the corner in a very, very scary scene.
Wanderlei Silva constructed one of the most fearsome reputations in mixed martial arts history, earning recognition as the most lethal competitor during Pride Championship's golden age. Yet combat sports exact a toll from every warrior, and Silva exchanged his physical and mental well-being for legendary status in Tokyo's iconic venue. Born in Curitiba, Brazil on July 3, 1976, Wanderlei grew up surrounded by violence in a dangerous neighborhood where street confrontations began before his teenage years. At 13, he entered Shootbox Academy to master Muay Thai and kickboxing under Rafael Cordeiro and Ruta Mar Fadrigo's guidance, accumulating facial scars that would mark him throughout his fighting career. Military service in his late teens introduced him to Vale Tudo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where his grappling skills flourished alongside tournament victories that caught his superiors' attention. This foundation combined street experience, military discipline, and Shootbox's brutal training methods including full-contact sparring, head kicks, and unrestricted violence. His professional debut arrived November 1, 1996 at BVF 6, where he demolished Dilson Filio with a first-round elbow strike in a bare-knuckle contest. 6 international Vale Tudo championship fights followed, producing 5 victories all by knockout or stoppage, until his devastating 32-second destruction of Eugene Jackson at IVC 10 on April 27, 1999, earned him the Axe Murderer nickname from amazed promoters and journalists. His initial UFC experience proved humbling, with Vitor Belfort's 44-second knockout at UFC Brazil, though he rebounded to flying knee Tony Patara before losing a unanimous decision to Tito Ortiz for the vacant light heavyweight title at UFC 25, ending his first promotional run but attracting Pride's attention.
This is what people don't know about Wanderlei, is that back when I was fighting him in Japan and Pride, he was a bully, and all the other fighters were scared of him.
Don Frye admitted feeling intimidated, despite his own fearsome reputation. Acknowledging Silva's presence commanded respect even from established veterans who typically feared no opponent.
He stepped out of his car, and I walked up to him, and he walked up to me and reached in his pocket, pulled out a pack of gum, said, "You want some gum?" So we started chewing gum together, like a couple little boys out there in the parking lot. I tell you what, he's a nice guy.
This contrast between the sport's most violent competitor casually sharing gum in a parking lot reveals the complex duality of Silva's character outside the fighting environment. Pride FC didn't merely elevate Silva to stardom, but established records that remain unmatched today, including 22 organizational victories, 15 knockouts, 18 knockdowns, 720 significant strikes landed, and a 1,939-day title reign spanning roughly 5.3 years. He captured the middleweight championship November 3, 2001 at Pride 17 by clinching Kazushi Sakuraba and delivering repeated knees until doctors stopped the contest due to a broken collarbone, beginning a brutal trilogy that saw Silva finish the beloved Japanese legend 3 consecutive times via knees, soccer kicks, and combinations. The 2003 Grand Prix showcased Silva's peak dominance as he eliminated Sakuraba, outpointed Hidehiko Yoshida, then trapped Quinton Rampage Jackson in the Muay Thai clinch for 17 consecutive unanswered knees at Pride Final Conflict 2003. Their rematch at Pride 28 proved even more savage when Silva recovered from an early knockdown to drag Jackson back into close range, finishing with knees and punches that left his opponent unconscious and bloodied across the ropes at 3:26 of round 2 in one of MMA's most iconic knockouts. Silva's psychological warfare proved equally devastating as opponents who displayed fear faced intensified aggression, while his perfect record against Japanese fighters included victories that left enemies with shattered orbital bones, broken collarbones, and completely swollen eyes. However, every triumph extracted payment through accumulating damage, reopening scar tissue, and absorbing thousands of strikes under Pride's ultra-violent rule set that permitted soccer kicks, stomps, and knees to grounded opponents designed to maximize bodily harm.
This is what people don't know about Wanderlei, is that back when I was fighting him in Japan and Pride, he was a bully, and all the other fighters were scared of him, and that's why he didn't like me, because I wasn't afraid of him. I'm like, you gonna shoot me? You gonna stab me? What am I gonna be afraid of?
Pride's collapse in 2007 marked the beginning of Silva's physical decline as he entered the UFC at age 31, following the sport's most dominant run, though different rules eliminating soccer kicks and stomps couldn't prevent his deterioration. His return against Chuck Liddell at UFC 79 resulted in a unanimous decision loss despite earning Fight of the Night honors, followed by a 36-second knockout of Keith Jardine that briefly restored hope before Rampage Jackson's counter right hand knocked him unconscious at UFC 92. After losing to Rich Franklin at UFC 99, Silva underwent nasal surgery that revealed the extent of his accumulated damage, with doctors discovering his airway was nearly completely blocked from repeated breaks during fights and training sessions.
Muito se especulou a respeito da minha cirurgia que eu fiz, que eu não fiz. A minha cirurgia foi o seguinte, a pessoa falou que estou com os olhos diferentes. Isso aqui é que eu lixei o osso do olho, porque eu tenho mais de 200 pontos só nessa região dos olhos.
The nose work was just as serious.
E, então a doutora abriu e lixou o meu osso. Então isso aqui vai abaixar e a intenção é que nas próximas lutas eu não corte da maneira tão fácil.
The surgeon found his nose had been fractured so many times that scar tissue and bone fragments severely restricted his breathing capacity.
Então eu reconstruí meu nariz e agora já estou respirando melhor, estou roncando menos. Eu sofri da apneia do sono.
Post-surgery, Silva reported 30% increased oxygen intake as the surgeon scraped his skull to remove built-up scar tissue that had accumulated over years of facial trauma.
Então eu acordava muitas vezes durante a noite, 4, 5 vezes. Isso para quem dorme, você dorme um pouco, acorda e já não quer mais dormir. Então às vezes no outro dia você acorda todo quebrado. E agora estou dormindo a noite toda, estou me sentindo super bem. Então
moving to middleweight at 185 pounds, following the procedure initially seemed beneficial as Silva defeated Michael Bisping by unanimous decision at UFC 110, but injuries returned with 3 broken ribs, forcing him from scheduled contests and knee surgery for torn ligaments, keeping him sidelined for months. His remaining UFC career alternated between brief glimpses of former greatness like his knockout of Brian Stann and crushing defeats such as Chris Laban's 27-second knockout at UFC 132, with every momentum surge interrupted by surgeries, recoveries, and training injuries. The turning point arrived in 2014, when a backstage altercation with Chael Sonnen during Ultimate Fighter Brazil 3 filming injured Silva's hand and back, leading him to take banned diuretics for swelling management before fleeing through his gym's back door when NSAC testers arrived for random drug testing on May 24, 2014.
The Nevada State Athletic Commission showed up to drug test Wanderlei and he ran. He literally ran. He ran out the back door, jumped in his car and said he didn't speak English.
When they showed up at his gym in Vegas to test him, he ran out the back door and threw his phone away because they were calling him to come back.
I've had many conversations with Wanderlei Silva. He speaks English.
The Nevada State Athletic Commission imposed a lifetime ban and $70,000 fine in September 2014, though a judge reduced this to a 3-year suspension in February 2016 after calling the original penalty excessive, resulting in Silva's UFC release at age 39, during what should have been his highest-earning years. Following his ban and promotional release, Silva signed with Bellator in March 2016, but that same month suffered a bicycle accident when a hit-and-run driver struck him while returning from training in Curitiba, requiring shoulder and knee surgery that contributed to the permanent limp visible in later footage. After attending a concussion lecture, Silva posted on Instagram that he identified with 12 of 15 symptoms the expert described, calling the recognition scary, but not sharing the complete list publicly at that time. His final 2 professional fights both ended in defeat. A unanimous decision loss to Chael Sonnen at Bellator 180 and Quinton Jackson's ground-and-pound stoppage at Bellator 206 on September 29, 2018, evening their series at 2-2 before Silva announced retirement in September 2022. Despite being inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame's Pioneer Wing on June 27, 2024, alongside Frankie Edgar, Joanna Jedrzejczyk, and Mauricio Shogun Rua, with Dana White praising his global impact, Silva filed a sworn legal declaration in October 2024, supporting the UFC antitrust lawsuit settlement. This federal court document revealed his fear of traumatic brain injury and CTE symptoms including depression, mood swings, irritability, sleep problems, and breathing difficulties, while listing multiple surgeries and stating that settlement funds would help him obtain healthcare and maintain basic housing and food security, adding that future money might arrive too late to benefit him.
Wanderlei Silva getting knocked out cold in the midst of the brawl and then getting dragged. His carcass being dragged to the corner in a very, very scary scene.
Less than 12 months after filing that sworn declaration detailing his fears of irreversible brain damage and financial struggles, the 49-year-old Silva returned for an exhibition boxing match against Acelino Popo Freitas on September 27, 2025 at Spaten Fight Night 2 in São Paulo. Silva entered 44 pounds heavier than the retired 2-division world boxing champion, struggling through early rounds as Freitas' superior technique dominated before Silva resorted to repeated illegal headbutts in round 4 that cost him 3 points and resulted in his disqualification at 134. Seconds after the referee's decision, both corners flooded the ring with approximately 20 people, creating chaos during which Rafael Freitas, Popo's son who wasn't an official cornerman, sucker-punched Silva in the back of the head while he still wore boxing gloves and stood exhausted from the contest. Silva collapsed unconscious and required his teammates to drag his limp body to safety while the brawl continued around him, leading to hospitalization for 4 hours before his release with severe facial damage.
This is Wanderlei Silva, who, by the way, probably shouldn't have been fighting, period, who, was a part of the class action lawsuit and gave testimony saying that, he's dealing with all kinds of brain issues.
The following day's video revealed Silva's completely swollen right eye, heavy bruising, and his admission of persistent headaches requiring medical evaluation for potential serious head injury.
Take tests here in Curitiba.
October 2nd updates detailed the full extent of damage, including 3 broken bones, 2 fractured eye sockets, his nose broken in 4 places, 7 stitches around his eye, ongoing headaches, dizziness, and an eye that remains sealed shut. Matt Brown's podcast response captured the broader tragedy by warning fellow fighters that health represents life's most valuable asset, noting that while broken limbs heal, brain damage remains permanent and irreversible, making any wealth meaningless once cognitive function deteriorates. As of March 2026, Silva serves his 180-day suspension with no new fights announced, his recent social media activity limited to resharing old Pride highlights, while fan footage reveals his permanent limp, damaged posture, and slower movements that starkly contrast the explosive warrior who once terrorized opponents across Pride rings before tens of thousands of spectators.
If your friends are there for you, they should be telling you not to fight now. Like, as we said, during the class action lawsuit, there was him citing brain issues, all that stuff. What is he doing in there?